There was a moment in Final Fantasy VI that really connected with me and resonated with me as a child. And to this day, I still quote it, I still reference this. And for me, it feels like it really actually applies to the MMORPG genre and its players in the same profound way. Now, Bannon says to Terra, "Once there was people pure and innocent. There was a box that they were told never to open. But one man went in and opened it anyway. He unleashed all the evils of the world: envy, greed, pride, violence, and control. All that was left in that box was a single ray of light: hope. We now confront those evils, and you are that last ray of light, our only hope." I honestly feel almost like it is a requirement of being a fan of the MMO, is being someone who clings onto hope. Hope for a future and for what is to come. And that's a good thing. But when we live our lives for the future, we forget what is real and what is present in our everyday. Same can be said for the past. I've known people, and maybe you do as well, who've never grown out of maybe their high school glory days, always dreaming and remembering those years, and forgetting to live in the here and now. Now, that intro might not be what you have expected, but I think it highlights what we're going to be kind of talking about a little bit today. And it's really two games. First, you have New World, and second, you have Throne and Liberty. Now, I talked about Throne and Liberty's updates in my video yesterday, and hopefully you got a chance to check it out. But now I wanted to jump in on where I feel Throne and Liberty and New World actually connect and where they differ. And this video is also partially inspired by this comment from Peter Pan, who says, "Funny how all creators suddenly embrace TNL whilst they were condemning it at first. Just because the fact that New World is going down, Dragon's Flight has reached its peak, Guild Wars is dying, and Riot and Ashes will be postponed. Suddenly TNL is the content pool, whilst there are so many good indie games at the moment." Now, we'll get back to Peter's comment here in full in just a second, and I'll toss in some other comments for you as well here later into this video. But first, I really want to talk about New World versus Throne and Liberty. And this video is also partially inspired by Jay Oddity. I'll include a link to his channel in the description of this video if you haven't been following Jay for his New World content. He actually has two channels, one dedicated to New World and one dedicated to Throne and Liberty, and I think that's going to be some really good resources for you if you guys are looking for more information. Also, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you're already here with me at this point, if you hit that like button, guys, as a thank you, how about this awesome picture of a panda? Just for hitting that like button. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, I talk about MMORPGs, video games, news, really whatever I want to talk about here. Somebody asked me recently on Twitter what the difference is Prime versus my breakout channels. And as I've stated many times, it's actually really kind of show you how to break the YouTube algorithm. So that video will get finished when it gets finished. So hopefully you guys look forward to that, especially if you've been interested in content creation in the gaming space. Going to be a lot of really great information for you with real world live examples, as I have taken my channels through different experiments. So I look forward to that here in the future. Anyway, let's get to the core crux to this video itself. New World versus Throne of Liberty. I absolutely adore New World. New World, I think, is one of the best new MMORPGs out there, and it is my MMORPG of 2022. You don't have to agree with me, but let's get that context set right. If you think New World is garbage, you're probably not going to agree with me on many things, but that's okay. We can still have this discussion, and you can let me know where we agree and where we differ in this regards. Now, Throne of Liberty, unreleased but targeting 2023. This is a Korean-based MMORPG, and if you've been around the block, Korean MMORPG tends to kind of have some baggage with it. We're not going to beat around the bush. Monetization issues have plagued the Korean base, but also these are very successful games. We don't know yet the monetization for Throne of Liberty, and that's going to be a kind of a point we talk about here in this versus section. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, Korean, like as a culture, as a gaming system, like they produce MMOs. Lost Ark is probably the biggest one out there, but it struggled at first. One of the things that I see often forgotten in terms of analysis and discussion is how Lost Ark really struggled originally in Korea, but they worked hard, they battled it out, and they eventually resolved some of the issues. So by the time it actually came out to the global market, a lot of that content had been made and been added, and a lot of people were finally able to go hands on with it. And maybe perhaps a lot of bots. At the end of the day, a free-to-play game doesn't disincentivize people from trying to bot and do various things. And the grind in and of itself can also incentivize that. But this isn't New World versus Throne of Liberty versus Lost Ark. These are us talking about these two games specifically. This is kind of where I get back to my analogy at the start of this video, like being in the present versus living for the future. MMO players are always kind of looking for the next big thing, the next new thing, the one MMO to save it all. But I'm actually not hearing the kind of label applied to Throne of Liberty, and that's going to give it some points. I think no matter what, whenever a new MMO launches, especially if it's got a big marketing arm behind it, I also do anticipate that Amazon might be publishing Throne of Liberty, and I'll keep you guys updated on that if that ends up coming to pass. Throne of Liberty looks to be like a very fun game. It looks like it's from just the visuals alone, the combat and what they've shown off alone, it looks like it's a game with a lot of potential. But MMOs aren't about how they launch. They never have been and they never will be. They're about content, communication, consistency, and having a unique hook. That's one thing. I think New World continues to stand out. Now I'm going to jump back into Peter's comment here in a little bit, but New World in and of itself just needs to keep showing up on the mat, and you're going to constantly see people come back, you're going to constantly see people dip out, and vice versa. This is how it is for the genre as a whole. Dragonflight will be an interesting case study when you start to look at the numbers, because it is doing really, really well, and the fact that World of Warcraft put out a roadmap I think is a very interesting aspect, because I've always kind of stated that roadmaps are a placeholder for trust, to help kind of say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And as long as they do that, that's a great way of scoring points in the trust bank. The reason you want to point that out is because people really don't know what's happening, because World of Warcraft has had a very inconsistent release schedule. New World's got a roadmap, and they have been delivering on it outside of one miss, which was the leaderboards, which shifted to February. So from a perspective, when we get back to these games, I'm not actually really concerned with how Throne and Liberty launches. I'm concerned with how the devs continue to work on any issues, communicate, and do so in a consistent and ideally, in a way, predictable fashion, so that players that are deep into it aren't ever less, wondering when the next update's going to come. And for casual players who are just kind of jumping in and jumping out, there's news and there's updates that constantly will show up in their feed, which will keep them interested and keep acting as an invitation back into the game. When it comes to the combat itself, I love that New World is an action combat MMO. I hear people asking for more skills. Throne and Liberty, it looks kind of actiony. It also might be kind of a soft tap target system. Again, everything I'm reading a lot online. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it. And as I continue to improve on that, so will my expertise in terms of speaking about it. But when it comes down to the combat, looks great. It does feel like they probably will support more actions. So for people who find New World's combat lacking, Throne and Liberty might be a really good place for them to land. But like I stated in my Throne and Liberty video, it's all going to be how it feels. I think New World's combat feels really good, especially in terms of like the two weapon system. Throne and Liberty seems to be matching that. I think that's going to be making some very interesting builds. I can't wait to go hands on with it. I'm not going to lie. I think that's going to be exciting. The world in and of itself, both Throne and Liberty look great. New World, it feels beautiful. One of the things that is the hook in New World is when you step into the game and you just get swept up away by its majesty. And I hope that Throne and Liberty has that same level of effect. Things visually all look good. So I'm that like it's a win in my book for how it's visualized. Now, monetization is where, and we'll see some comments from you guys here in a second, is where I think there is no game out there that does monetization better than New World. It is a buy once, play forever MMORPG with a cash shop that has no pay to win and nothing that's going to benefit you or boost you up. That could always change, and that's the thing that I always try to remind people when they get sucked into these hype cycles. Hype cycles are awesome and fun, and they have the tendency to remove the reality of gaming for players. We play these games that change, and anything can change, and we've seen it happen time and time again. Hey, the devs have stated there's going to be no pay to win for the first 3 months. It's like anything can change and is possible, and it really is going to be a function of that. Now, I think we're seeing better monetization structures and more acceptance of a different model than just like subscription model or free to play cash shop. But this is a Korean based MMO, and just like anybody who's been following along with those, shouldn't be surprised. New World clearly and easily takes monetization against any other game out there, because when you start factoring in dollar per hour joy, constant content and updates, more features and things like that that are just clearly communicated, honestly, for $40, for people who spend $40 and have thousands of hours in New World, haven't had to be asked for spending another dime. As long as monetization in Throne and Liberty is done in a fair and equitable way, which will vary person to person, gamer to gamer, will generate lots of content, lots of outrage, lots of attention. That is what will be on the docket for Throne and Liberty, just like it will be for the protocol. It is the nature of gamers. It is the nature of gamers and the acceptance curve. So just buckle up and get ready for it. It's got a lot of it's going to feel like a little old hat at this point, but it is what it is. Now, I want to jump back into what Peter Pan had to say, and what you all also had to say here as well. And I'm going to break down Peter's comment first. Funny how all creators all of a sudden embrace TNL. I think essentially to kind of point this out, I think a lot of creators are full of bullshit. And I don't know if they know that about themselves. I think that there's the sense that, same thing with gamers, right? It's not just necessarily creators. I think if we're going to be honest about ourselves in gaming, hype is a hell of a drug, right? Like, at the end of the day, I've seen people state boldly and plainly X, and then, as soon as those ads start popping up in your feed, as soon as your friends start playing it, you get sucked in, right? So I'm not going to dock any creator for saying, TL is going to be garbage, and then, now it's looking cool. They're either just playing the game, the algorithm game, and that's, what Mr. Beast even talks about multiple times. If you think about YouTube as a game, I don't fault anybody for playing it, in that regards, because people have dreams of becoming Uber creators and, world famous and all that stuff, which sounds terrifying. So let's try to keep it reasonable here, people, like a really cool group of people. That'd be fine. But, yeah, I'm not surprised by it. The same thing goes, they embrace it and they'll turn on it and stab its back as soon as it's profitable and equitable for them to do so, as soon as the tide changes. And a lot of that is just reading in the mood. You can go see clearly from my history of content that is something I actively fight against, which is really kind of fun. Sometimes I hit a trend. Sometimes I have a video that's already ready to go, or it's already out and pops off. And then you get a lot of interesting opinions of people who are fatigued with that kind of mindset. Oh, this is somebody who's just hopping on a trend because they didn't discover you one way or the other. But no, they'll hop on whatever trend is going to try to benefit them from an algorithmic perspective. And as soon as that train leaves the station, unless they are absolutely just in love with it, they'll turn on it, and that will get the views, and they'll just move on to the next thing, and they'll grow. And that's because what people do. That's just how it works. If we wish it to change, we should have that conversation probably in another video. Just because the fact that New World's going down right now, it's going up, it'll go up again, it'll go down again, it'll go up again. Same thing with Dragonflight, it's up, it'll go down. Same thing with Guild Wars, up and down. Same thing with Riot and with Ashes, up and down, up and down. The only, if you factor out World of Warcraft, if you take it out of the picture altogether, MMOs are in a really great state. WoW is this outlier that's just tossed out in the corner. And it throws off everybody's kind of expectations in terms of numbers. But MMO players, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. Content cycle, the 3 seasons, hype, grind, and bitch, right? Those are the 3 factors that happen. You get news, you get excited about it, you finally get to go hands-on with it, you consume it, and then eventually you reach a point where you complain about it. Whether you do that as a content creator, as a gamer, it's all the same. Whether you bitch on it about on Twitter or Reddit, or you do it in a video, it's all the same. Anyway, so that's just where I would say there. Yeah, and if TNL is the content pool, I haven't seen that algorithmically, but I'm probably sure I'm still on some people's blacklist because I decided to retire from Final Fantasy 14. That's proven out my point, which is great because I have the data, so I'm thankful for that. Again, that will all be in the big video of how I broke the YouTube algorithm. So we'll talk about more of that in the future. And yeah, there's definitely some great indie games. I got accepted into the Dark and Darker playtest and missed out on it by I think a day, but I'm accepted, so hopefully I'll be able to jump into the next playtest. Lots of really cool stuff on the horizon, lots of really great games. what I'd recommend in this case, like if you guys are in that, you're that fatigue of content creation and cycles and games and hype and things like that. Yeah. Find a good indie game, sit down, and just enjoy it. Don't worry about what some quote unquote influencer has to think about any of it. Cypher says, NCSoft, so it's a pay to win bleep show. Yeah, maybe. Like, that's where that ray of light comes in. There's always hope, right? When it comes down to the content, I think this also is a cultural thing. From everything I hear, especially within like East versus West mindset. In the East, nobody seems to be bothered with pay to win, or like maybe that's an overgeneralization. But here in the West, it's a very big thing. And that's where maybe like Amazon comes in and makes changes versus the East and the West that could end up being a very positive thing overall. But for as much as people complain about pay to win, like as much as it's this, almost like this term, it's this label and it dooms your game, they sure make a hell of a lot of money. And that's, in my mind, unfortunately louder than anybody who's grumbling. And the downside about this and the algorithm is us grumbling about it only boosts the game up. Us complaining about Diablo Immortal only boosts the game up. And to connect these two, connect Cypher here with Peter Pan, one thing that is, especially if it is pay to win, it will end up being that people will make content about how they spent $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 and all they got was a t-shirt or something like that. And if that ends up being the case, well, that content's like crack for some people, and so that's going to blow up as well. You won't see me spending that kind of money because I enjoy having my balls attached to my body, because my wife would probably, if not murder me, would hurt me greatly. Anyhow, Pip says, monetization aside, all these MMOs trying to push the ARPG mechanics like spinning AoEs look too gimmicky for me. Spam moves, a game, as Simon says, looks like another studio pushing marketing, graphics, and probably a cash shop. If it has a cash shop, it will be another pile of garbage because they focus too much on graphics and lack of development. We gamers quickly wise up to these repetitive attempts at the same cash grab. The problem now, the only thing I would disagree in Pips, because we actually agree deeply on a lot of games and those principles. Thing I would say that it's not about us. It's all about those next generation of suckers. I know I got my sixth sucker on the way. My baby number 6 due in May. So it's about me trying to make sure that they are able to understand the value of money and what it means. Because yes, you can't control adults and their spending. And my wife's been on this YouTube kick about how these people are in such insane debts and financial crisis. It's terrifying and it's tragic and it's awful. And you should pay off all your debts and owe nobody any dollars. Like, that will be a great way to set up your life. If you want to know how, you can ask me. I will walk you through it. Julie and I paid off $100,000. It was awful. I never want to borrow money ever again. And hopefully I never will have to. So I'd encourage you guys, just get your houses in order on that, and don't be, if you were struggling with these kind of games, just avoid them at all costs. And that means maybe get YouTube Premium so you don't get those daggum ads. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Beyond Greatness says, I hope this one looks good. I really like what I'm seeing. I do too. There is nothing wrong, because I have no problem with controlling my spending and how I play these games. I really hope it's good. I would love another great MMORPG out there for people to play. I would love it to be a game that continues to evolve the monetization in a healthy way for a lot of players, opening up the genre, giving more people a chance to check out MMOs. I think more people playing MMOs is a good thing. Devilman says, fine with weapon-based classes, but I'll probably get upset if we only get 3 abilities. I think that's kind of in reference to New World, which you do have 3 abilities, and now a new rune, heart rune, ultimate ability. I think essentially where I see a lot of people ask for more abilities, I don't think New World would benefit that much. I would not mind a 4th ability. Just gonna say that. I'll put that out there for New World. I think especially if it ends up being kind of like, I don't think it's full action for Throne and Liberty. But with an action-based game, I don't necessarily need tons of abilities. It ends up being more skill-based and then timing-based. And the fact that you swap the 2 weapons does feel good. And if this ends up having just a really good combat feel and it's a lot of fun to swap between, I think then it's going to feel good and people will be excited about it. Now, On Man says, definitely will be breathtaking to see how much content will be gated behind cash. NC will surely outdo themselves once again. It's a possibility. I don't think gating people behind content, like gating content behind cash, ends up being the right thing. We could say that subscription models is the same kind of, could fall in that same category, personally. But I think ultimately is where you end up seeing, if you can view like cosmetics and mounts and things like that as content, then yeah, there's going to be a lot. I'm sure there's going to be a healthy cash shop, healthy store for this game, because again, the numbers just prove it out, and we can all kind of like shed a tear, but that's the world we live in. So we don't know much about the monetization, but I think if you are anybody who's following Korean MMOs, like it's probably gonna result into, is this game pay to win, and why it's pay to win, and oh no, I love this game, it's not pay to win. Anyway, it's gonna be pretty predictable what happens over the next couple of months. Mike C says, is it weird that I don't like games where every character looks like a fashion model? LOL, give me a cross between Red Dead Online and New World. Is that so hard? I think essentially depends on just, that's art, direction, etc. As far as hard, I mean, I would say this falls personally for Throne and Liberty, into the cultural side for adding this stuff to that, more options in New World. I would love to see that. I think that would be benefiting New World as well, but they would have to add the ability to kind of change those look after the fact, because many of us have characters that are more than a year old, and it would be kind of a bummer if all the new characters got to look awesome and your character kind of looks kind of weird. Anyway, Wizik says, so far it looks like the next generic Korean MMO that will fail hard in the West. Replying also to Kim Lee, who says, simply do not trust Koreans' formula for MMOs. Doubtful that anyone brings up phones during their pitch. Which Korean MMO got proper updates? We had a failing after failing. I think Lost Ark is the counter example, and while you might not like it, I'm just speaking to the numbers and speaking to the popularity, making content, working on it. It's never about how these games launch. A lot of people put a lot of interest in how a game launches, and that's, I guess, all well and good if you're a single player game. But when you're a game that's meant, and it's a core principle about evolution, I don't know what, like, if you haven't caught on to how these games actually function and flow and move and evolve and grow and shrink, at the core of it, at the core crux of it is that, if you keep coming back and keep coming back, that's not a bad thing. If you come back to the well every couple of years, that's not a bad thing. You're a returning player. It's a good sign of health with any of these games. But ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. I think monetization will be the big kicker. It will be one thing that kind of keeps people both interested and also on the fence. There will be that surge, like Peter Pan said, of interest and coverage as the game gets closer, as the hype builds, as people want to check out the next latest, biggest, greatest thing, and then it'll dip down and die. And then essentially the question is, will it go and survive? So that's where the hype, the drop, the fight, and maybe they'll survive. And I hope they do. Again, more options, more players playing MMORPGs, I think benefits the whole. I think MMOs are inherently tribal based off of the nature of the business model that they've been, especially when you commit to a subscription, to a community, to a way of life, to a culture, to even a way of groupthink. All of these things are possible both in the online world, and those are also possible within MMORPGs and the communities that thrive and strive, because of that. Without that subscription-based model, it gives you more freedom to kind of jump around. And so we've seen MMOs become more seasonal over the course of the last decade. And I think that's only going to continue forward. There's a couple of caveats, a couple of questions to see what remains for the genre as we get into and past 2023. 2023 is going to be a great year. It's going to be a fun year regardless. And even if, Lost Ark, even if Throne and Liberty isn't like a game that ends up ultimately resonating with you in the long run, depending on its business model, if it ends up being like free to play or buy to play, you're not really risking much, and it really is just going to be a personal choice that you have to make, for yourself in that moment. Now, all that being said, when it comes down to it, if you haven't played New World, it's phenomenal. It's here. It's $40. It's not asking you for any other money if you don't want it. They got a lot of great content on the way. They got a lot of great content in the game. People like to try and meme on it or misunderstand the numbers themselves, and that's just the way the internet works. I keep telling you about it because it's great. And if you guys want more of my New World content, I got a New World channel, Ginger World Gaming. If you want more of my Blue Protocol content, Ginger Blue Gaming. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm working on, and I hope to share with you guys over the course of 2023 as well. Anyway, I just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys today about New World versus Throne and Liberty. About, at the end of the day, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. Don't let anybody tell you how to spend your money. And if you have problems spending your money, maybe seek some professional help. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for your time. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. But until then, take care.